like I said, I'm the conservation director. I do a lot of our open space, conservation, policy work, and program work. And my colleague Elliott here is next.
Great, thank you, Lindsay and Liz. My name is Elliott Clay. I am the Agriculture and Water Programs Director for the Illinois Environmental Council. I've been working here for just over 2 years now. I used to work on Senate Republican staff before this in Springfield, and I do I wear a lot of different hats. So working on food system stuff, working very closely with the Stewardship Alliance and Chicago Food Policy Action Council. As a side note, thank you to SIFPAC for hosting this. I'm sad that we're not in person, but glad that we all get to see each other virtually this time at least. But I'm also a lobbyist for the Environmental Council and deal with a lot of different policy things. And 30 by 30 is going to play an important role in some of our work going forward. In terms of what the Illinois Environmental Council actually is, we basically serve as the trade association for all of the different environmental groups in Illinois. So we represent a lot of big groups like Sierra Club and Nature Conservancy and a lot of other folks, but then also a lot of community-based organizations. And yeah, as Lindsay said, lobbyists for nature. You always hear bad things about lobbyists. I feel like we're the good ones. So it's definitely an exciting place to be, but very happy to be here.
Yeah, and just a little more, IEC's mission is we do a lot of coalition building, and we work to collaboratively build policy solutions that take into account all the folks from a community-based level all the way up to the big organizations that will be impacted by those policy decisions and solutions. So we work on that stuff.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Elliott. And I'm Liz Ruppel. I'm the policy organizer at the Illinois Stewardship Alliance. We are a statewide nonprofit, and our mission is that we are an alliance of farmers and eaters. We all eat food, and we should care about the policy that creates the food that's on our plates. So we find, connect, train, and amplify the leadership of farmers and eaters who use their choices and their voices to shape a more just and regenerative local food system and farm system. So like I said, we are statewide, and we are working to bring farmers and eaters to the table so we can help educate our policymakers to really form a more powerful voice that we can create change with. I shared the Environmental Council's website in the chat. I'm also going to share our website in the chat right now if you'd like to learn more about us. And next, I know that you all opened up, the Chicago Food Policy Action Council opened up with a wonderful land acknowledgement at the beginning of this summit. So not to take up too much space to do more, but I want to acknowledge that I'm on the Indigenous Kickapoo and Peoria territory. I would love to see, and if you are curious to see where you are, I invite you to check out this map, and you can put a pin, literally just click where you are on the map and show us your location. And what I'd love to do is show you guys some of those results. I know that a couple responses have come in. So if you've clicked on that link, we should be able to see where you're at. And it looks like we have some folks here down in the Sangamon County area and Morgan County. That's great. Looking to be in Cook County too. I love it. They're all popping in. That's great. And as you can see, the territories are on this map as well. And I will share a resource so you can put in your exact address too, to kind of see where you're located too. So this is just a fun way, to see so that we can continue education too, but also so we can see, where everybody is located. So thanks for participating in that. I'll stop a share right now and share another resource with you. if you'd like to put in your address, and you can find that exact location. And with that, I will again share my screen and we will get things going. And I think I'm going to pass it over to Elliott first.
That is great. Thank you. So yeah, just kind of broadly at the beginning, we're going to just kind of walk through sort of what 30 by 30 is, and we'll kind of take it from there. So the goal ultimately is to conserve 30% of Illinois' land and water by 2030. But like in terms of like the outcomes for this, you know, we've been really looking through like what does that mean for Illinois, and we'll get more into that here in a bit. But the outcomes, you know, are basic, like a basic understanding of what does 30% mean for our state in terms of conservation, because a lot of the times it's been focused on open space and we need to think outside the box a little bit. Why it's important to conserve 30% by 2030. Like what is the ultimate, what are we ultimately trying to get out of this? And why your voice is so important in helping us shape this, because Chicago and the surrounding region is going to play a very important part in this plan once we get it together. So we're really excited to hear your feedback on this. Liz, you can go next slide. Yeah, here's just kind of a snapshot. There's been a lot of really big movement just in the last month on this, in the wake of President Biden and Vice President Harris being elected to the White House. So we're very excited. Liz, you can go to the next slide. Here's broadly where this all started. The United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity put out a report that was seeking to figure out where we were going on natural solutions to climate change. A lot of the talk that everybody's heard regarding carbon emissions and greenhouse gases has centered around the energy sector and transportation, which is obviously a big contributing factor. But I think there's a also a really big understanding that between deforestation and encroachment on other wildlife habitats, that is also having an impact. So they wanted to look at, they were looking at this and they estimated we need to conserve about 30% of land and water in the world in order to help start the mitigating process of greenhouse gases established under the Paris Climate Agreement. In 2019, Senator Udall in Congress introduced a resolution that was affirming that the United States should get on board with doing this. There was a number of other countries in the Paris Climate Agreement that also agreed on this, but due to the United States being pulled out of that under former President Trump, we never really got a good establishment of it. And then the exciting thing is on January 27th, President Biden signed a really big executive order related to just the status of climate in the United States. And it had a lot of different parts. But one of the big ones was saying that the United States can and should be figuring out how to establish 30 by 30 goals at the federal level and at the state. And we're really excited about this. The U.S. just got back into the Paris Climate Accord and everything too. So we're in a really good spot to get some movement on this. So it ultimately leaves the question, you know, where does Illinois fall in this? Liz, going to the next slide.
This is my part, I think, right, Elliott?
Yep, I think so.
So I want to start by saying with the Biden executive order, there was no explicit directives to states. So we have the opportunity to contribute to this national campaign, national goal. And our goal in organizing this is that Illinois has a collaborative plan where we're all speaking with one voice. We have an idea, some goals, and all of our powerful organizations and community-led groups are working towards that goal together. What we don't want to happen is all of our great organizations and groups that work on these issues are doing things disjointedly. So this work has been happening already for a while. The National Geographic has sponsored or has been doing this work. The Nature Conservancy has been doing this work. Places in Illinois, Open Lands, the Shed Aquarium, a lot of folks have already started working on 30 by 30. But then when we start to think about how do we set goals as a state in Illinois, that's when we had to start thinking about how we do it collaboratively and from a community-focused viewpoint. So our staff at the Illinois Environmental Council, in partnership with our members, thought that it was urgent, it was about time to create some sort of structure to think through the Illinois plan. We have had experience building the Illinois Climate Table, which is a coalition of folks and groups, organizations, stakeholders that work to pass the Clean Energy Jobs Act. That's what our experience is with. So we're borrowing a lot of the structure and ideas and things that worked from the Illinois Climate Table. And it's also a great opportunity to kind of fix the things that didn't work in this next iteration that's focused around nature-based solutions and 30 by 30. So we wanted to organize this coalition around the nature-based climate solutions and align that work with the international and national 30 by 30 campaign, which is that 30%, the definition of the 30 by 30 is 30% of land and water conserved by 2030. And if you haven't heard about that yet, it is that it's a mid-step on the way to 50% of land and water conserved by 2050, which will, there's a lot of scientific data around that being a key to mitigating climate change. So this is a solution to climate change. And it's a lofty goal. I want to put that out there first. It's a lofty goal internationally, it's a lofty goal for the US, and it's a lofty, lofty goal for Illinois specifically. We are currently, if you think of like the traditional definition of conserved land that is in like a public space, open land that's publicly accessible, that's owned by the state, protected and managed, we only have about 4% of all the acres in Illinois. And to get to 30% would be an astronomical goal if we're thinking of that word conserve in the strictest definition. So back to when we were organizing this coalition and thinking about it, we were also thinking about how many other conservation, sustainable ag, environmental justice organizations are already out there operating, doing fantastic work here in our state, as well as farmers and farm businesses, outdoor recreation organizations, sportsman organizations. We just have so much of this structure already in place that we wanted to think through how we unsilo that work, include those folks in this goal altogether. Sorry, I'm admitting people from the waiting room. So we wanted to create this table, and you're going to hear us say a bunch during this conversation that nothing is permanent, nothing is solidified. This is a collaborative approach, and it feels messy to, especially I think Elliott and I's very type A personalities, to say that, you know, we don't have the answer to that, and we should maybe ask our community that. I think the way we're used to operating is, here's what we're going to do, and this is what we'd like you to do, and this is what we'd like you to do, but that is not the way that we've seen success in building power and building policy and making long-term change happen and stick, and getting decision makers to support those things. And we have the opportunity to involve everyone that is going to be affected. So that is our vision, is this just very collaborative, community-led, organized strategy for Illinois. And we do not yet have goals. Like, measurable goals yet. We aren't even sure what those goals really look like for Illinois, but we are committed to building them with our community and thinking through with the folks that are experts in those areas, what those goals should be and how we think about them and what the strategies and action items are. So we think about traditionally conserved open space, owned by the government or public space. Go back just one more. Sorry, Liz. So when we think about that in Illinois, we have a little bit of that, but it's not like out west when they already are at the 30% and there's a national park that's, 25-30% of the state, and they're already checking their box for we contributed to the national goal. We are nowhere near that. So at least from our perspective, we need to think about how agriculture plays into this, how urban green space and urban agriculture and sustainable ag, the practices that we use on our ag land, local food, our local food systems, how all of these other pieces can weave into maybe being considered under that definition of conserved land and conserved acreage. I think Illinois and maybe our friends here in the Midwest are going to have the most creative plans and definitions for getting to this 30%. I think it's going to be a lot simpler for our friends out West, but it's an opportunity for us to build in a lot of the goals that our organizations and folks already have into this plan and capitalize on the resources coming from the federal government around organizing under this 30 by 30 umbrella. So the other thing I want to touch on this slide, Liz, I know I'm being a little long-winded, but I really want to hammer home this collaborative approach and our big vision and how it's loose and we're working on getting there together. But so the timeline for this work is that we have established a coalition. It's open. If your organization is interested, we're going to send out a survey at the end and you can get involved. And right now there are no norms, nothing to sign on to. We are just having conversations. And then we're going to organize listening sessions for the next 6 months around different topics. Maybe that'll be local food. Maybe that'll be land trusts. Maybe the listening sessions will be more geographically focused. We want to listen to people in neighborhoods in Chicago that will be impacted. We want to listen to folks in Southern Illinois, the Midwest. So we are going to have these listening sessions. Some will be hosted by local community groups. Some will be hosted by our partners and statewide organizations for, like I said, about 6 months, this big, long time to just listen to the community and decide where we go from there. And then the exciting piece for us as policy buffs is that one of our big goals coming out of this is to one of our final products is to be a policy package that incorporates the strategies that will get us to 30 by 30. And we don't know what those are yet, but they might be things like supporting land trusts, supporting environmental justice organizations, funding cover crop programs or different incentives, things that support local food infrastructure and the local food system as a whole. So we're going to come up with these ideas together, write the bills, and hopefully package it together under 30 by 30. And that'll be an Illinois state bill package that we're aiming for January of 2022. That's right, Elliott, right? January 2022. Okay. All right, Liz, you can go to the next slide now that I have talked everyone's ears off. So Liz put these slides together and she did fantastic because we had these pillars. And this is reflective of the Clean Jobs Coalition, Clean Energy Jobs table. They have these 4 pillars that they organize around, and that model has worked really well. But our pillars are not yet solid. We haven't decided as a community that these are our pillars, so she kind of made them half pillars for us to indicate they aren't quite finalized yet. So we've been talking about them as buckets. So these are our kind of 4 buckets that we see this work happening under and inside of. So we have the bucket that you think of when you think of 30 by 30, and the way that I think a lot of states out west are going to be thinking about this. And this is community-driven land conservation, equitable open space access, open space that you can drive to or walk to and hike and experience, that will be managed using practices that mitigate carbon. You know, this is wetlands. This is a lot of our work will fall into this bucket. The next bucket is sustainable agriculture practices. And I think this one's kind of limited to, not limited, it's the majority of our state. Row crops, corn, soybean fields. What can we do to build soil health, to make those acres work for us under whatever new conserve definition we come up with? How do we make those acres count for us and help to mitigate climate change? The next bucket or pillar is focused around local food systems, the local food economy, building a resilient local food system. We know that practices that support a resilient local food system, we know that those practices also contribute to mitigating climate change. And when we can all participate in an equitable local food system, those ripples ripple out and help mitigate carbon. The last pillar is still a little, we're still working on what it means and what the strategies are. We're working on those for all of them, but what the strategies are. And this pillar will be focused around promoting jobs, equity, and economic opportunity, especially in communities of color and areas and populations and communities that have been traditionally not able to access open space or have access to careers and jobs in those areas. So these are our 4 buckets. We'll be asking you later, is there part of your work or part of work that we should be thinking about that don't fall into these buckets? Are these the pillars that we should select? Is there something else? Does one of these not make sense? We'll be asking for feedback around all of that. But as we have thought through the work that we're already doing and our partners are already doing, these are the natural buckets and way that it organized. All right, Liz, next slide, I think.
I think that is it for right now. So we just threw a lot at you. Mm-hmm. And we're wondering what questions that you have right now. I'm not sure if it's possible to unmute yourself, or if you just want to put your name in the chat box and stack up some questions. We do have, I think we can take, 6 to 10 minutes for questions right now before we kind of break out. And asking these questions could help in your breakout session if we need to make anything a little more clear before you head into those. I do see one question right now from Bob. I'm not sure if that's something Lindsay or Elliott you can answer, but
okay.
Yeah.
Does the 30 by 30 plan? Oh, sorry, Elliott, were you about to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say I can cover this one. Bob was asking about whether a 30 by 30 process envisions like financing mechanisms to compensate farmers to deliver low-cost aquifer recharge services. I think that's a great question, and we haven't delved that specifically into that yet, but I think generally in this work, there's going to be a big need to uncover financing mechanisms in general related to all of this. So this can include things like incentivizing, sustainable agricultural practices on our working lands, to new incentives for like local businesses, small processing facilities, and everything in between. We haven't even gotten close to IDing all of the different, financial hurdles that we're going to need to overcome in order to do this, especially for communities that have not traditionally been very heavily involved with conservation policy. And this is an awakening for us to kind of, come to that reality and figure out, where does the system benefit some people, but not everyone. And we want to, ID those.
I'll take a quick stab at answering the question too, and it'll be the answer you'll get sick of hearing, is that we don't know yet. And if our community, our coalition identifies this or anything else as a strategy and a goal of our collaborative plan for the Illinois 30 by 30 plan, then it'll absolutely be included, but it will be up to the folks that participate and make their voices heard.
All right, I can't really see unless I scroll through if anyone has unmuted, but if you do want to ask a question, just unmute or type your name in the chat so I can call on you.
And while we're waiting, I will just tell people, if you're super interested in 30 by 30 and what other states are doing, the Center for Western Priorities is kind of leading the charge. They've made some really beautiful story maps about different strategies, potential strategies. They have a story map that's all about private land conservation, one that's all about public land conservation. From what I've seen so far, I don't think they've dived into agriculture very much yet, but there's a lot of information there that I think we'll be taking into consideration as we make our plan. Yeah, I see Laura's asking, how is the 30% conservation going to be distributed across the state? Which regions are more conducive? We don't know. We don't know yet. So, and I will reiterate that I don't even think it's going to be 30%. I don't think we need to get hung up on the math, on the 30%, on this acre counts, this acre doesn't. I think it'll be a variety of strategies that contribute to us getting to somewhere around a third increase from what we're already doing. Is that right, Elliott? And I know some of us, me included, actually love the math and love thinking about how we budge that 4% number and how we get it higher and higher. But I think the creative thinking around this is going to need us to kind of unmarry ourselves from the statistics, because it's hard to capture, right? If we build a resilient local food system, that is going to make a humongous impact, but can we measure it in a way that tells us how far that 4% has budged towards 30? So we're having those conversations, and we invite you to help us think through how we have them too.
Yeah, and just to add on, I mean, in terms of how it's going to be distributed across the state, I think we envision this, I mean, it's going to be statewide kind of impact in terms of like all of the communities that need to be involved in order for us to achieve this. I mean, just as an example, I mean, Chicago is obviously a very, very urban area, but one of the things we're thinking through with like the, the food system resiliency is, the pandemic really showed that there were some serious issues with our food system in general. And I don't think anybody on this call would disagree with that. But, doing things like increasing the amount of locally sourced healthy foods on its own helps decrease greenhouse gas emissions, just because the point A to point B for the food to get to somebody's table is shorter. And those transportation costs related with those industries are things that we're really interested in interpreting and figuring out how those things have a measurable impact on carbon emissions. So, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to include a lot of different stuff. So, yeah.
And one interesting piece is that we started this work before the Biden executive order. We didn't know that it was going to be part of the new administration's work at all. So it started as a campaign, like a public campaign, communication campaign. And then it was backed by the Biden administration, and we heard that there was going to be a national goal setting, public policy goal setting. So that's kind of given it teeth, but we don't have much. They haven't given us very many details on what the states can be expected, how they should expect to make their plans yet, or what sort of standards or ways to measure their thinking.
I see Katie's got a question in there about whether 4% includes CRP acres. I do not believe it does.
Oh, Katie, I'm not sure. So David Holman gave me this number, and he has worked with Prairie State Conservation Coalition. So it definitely includes all the land trust acreage. And then I'm thinking that he did do a calculation that included CRP. And Elliott, this is what I was joking the other day when I said, oh, we've budged from 4% to 4.1%. So I think he had added that in, and it added us to about 4.1 or 4.2, which means the needle's moving. It's upwards movement, it's good movement. But yeah, there may be other programs like that we just haven't figured in to the calculation. So who knows where we're actually at? But it's likely closer to 4% than 30.
Yeah, and I just want to point out too, just with Katie's mention of a working lands program that's in the Farm Bill, is that the Farm Bill is coming around again, because it always does, every 5 years, never-ending cycle. So 2023 is when we'll have a newly written Farm Bill. So that's going to be a lot of opportunities for local food conservation, these working lands programs. So yeah, there will be a lot of opportunities there to maybe bump up this number even more.
Yeah, and it's great to see that there's already a commitment from the federal administration around this goal. That makes me have a lot of hope for a Farm Bill renewal, about where the federal administration's heads are at, if they're already considering things like this. So,
Katie Adams, I have one additional question. Do you know if there's any synergy work between like the proposed Agricultural Resilience Act and this 30 by 30 commitment?
Elliott, do you?
At the federal level, I don't think that there has been, but it's definitely a good question to raise. I mean, one of the things in that executive order that Biden issued was that the Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, and I believe the Environmental Protection Agency are all supposed to be working on figuring out, within their own policy spaces, how 30% is going to look, and to collaborate with, state and local and tribal officials to figure out how to implement that in the states and territories. Yeah, I don't think that there's been anything specifically on that, but definitely a good flag.
All right, if you have any other questions, feel free, type them in the chat. This is where we're going to kind of break out into some groups. I'd love to do a little temperature check. If you want to put a reaction on your Zoom. So if you go up to your panel or your panel below and you hit reactions, if you put like it'll look like this. For you're not really sure what's going on. Maybe a little more explanation might be needed. Or if you want to put like a thumbs up or a heart if you are feeling confident going into your Zoom breakout. I see a thumbs up.
Couple thumbs up.
Okay, that's great. I don't see any scared faces yet, so that's awesome. So this is what's going to happen in these breakout groups. I think we have, a little over 30 people. So maybe, I'm not sure, just based on reactions. Oh, I do see one scared face as I go through. Should we just do 3 breakout groups, guys? Or do we want to extend it more?
That makes sense to me. Just about 10 folks in each group.
Okay. Yeah, I see some folks saying they might just lurk. So we're going to break up into rooms, and we have just through each of those buckets or half pillars that Lindsay explained, where we have like a series of 4 questions that we want to ask you guys. And we're going to have about 30 minutes together in these rooms to go through all of that. And, if you have additional questions, we want to capture those. If you have feedback, we want to capture those. But just know that, like Lindsay has stated before, this plan is new. This is what we're looking for feedback, so we can funnel it back to the coalition and the ever-growing coalition that you can be a part of. So we may not have all the answers, but we want to try to get those answers together.
Yeah, we're kind of at this stage where we're identifying the questions first and getting the answers.
So, Liz,
Yes.
if people this is Roger Cooley, if people are who need ASL services, if in the participant name, in their name, if they could put ASL in front of their name, as well as if they need Spanish translation in front of their name, to make sure we're getting all of the folks who need extra assistance support into that group, the group 1. Or people can just put group 1, but either some indication as we break up. But I will start that. So who should I assign the group 1 from you guys? Doesn't
I
matter.
can be in that group.
Okay. All right. I'll start the process then.
And then Liz, while they work on that, how will we get the list of questions out?
So you guys should have access to that, and then you two will be the leaders in the group, just taking notes.
Okay. Can we share a screen within the group?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think with host capabilities,
Great.
you should be able to. And Lindsay and Elliott, I'll put that in the chat. I wasn't sure if you had it or not. There we go.
And then how are we on time? What's our time check?
We are pretty much right on time. We just went a couple minutes over, so we'll probably come back at like 2:20.
Great.
Candace.
Hey,
What's your question?
I thought you that maybe the translator needed help.
Yeah, she's in room 1.
Okay, can you, if you can make me co-host, I might be able to go in and help you.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. I'm gonna move you over there. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, so it's actually no option for interpretation in the breakout room. Like when you go in, you don't see it. So they she allowed her to ask like in.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody actually is requiring it in this session, but Elliot, should I pull everyone back in?
Yeah, I think we can. Sorry, I was confused. I didn't know if I had control of all of that or what was going on.
Okay, looks like they've got 20 seconds left.
We're back.
We're back.
We got through one pillar.
That's great.
But
We were
chit-chatting.
technology challenged.
We rushed through our 4, but we still got some good feedback though.
Great.
So I guess let's share what that feedback is. So we gained some time. So we can use this to keep going as a group. So I want to just double check if Leticia is all good. Is she in her, are we good to proceed? I think so. Okay, I'll just keep talking and Roger, throw a book at me if you need to. So would it be helpful for me to share the notes? Did you guys take notes on there? Or is it better verbally?
We just want to do it verbally, but I've got some stuff written down.
Cool.
So
All right. Well, I like seeing your faces, so let's do that. Elliott or Lindsay, do you want to share first?
Maybe someone from my group wants to share. Katie says that her brain's churning. I don't want to volunteer you, Katie, but if anyone from our group would like to share, I might turn it to them. Oh, do we have the capability to unmute them and stuff if they want to?
I think we can.
Yeah, we
There we
can unmute.
Oh, good.
I would ask that fellow group members jump in because I'm sure that I'll leave off some of our relevant discussion, but we focused on local food economy that also kind of tied into jobs and economic opportunity and equity. And we're talking about intersections between rural and urban and peri-urban spaces and what conservation might look like on those, as well as really need for industries and economies to pop up in those areas that serve those areas, and to have land access and long-term tenure in those spaces so that that work can continue to grow. And there are some really good ideas around what that might look like and how it can be on the landscape. So if I forget anything, please other folks chime in.
Yeah, I think you captured it well. We had some experts in our group. I had a question that I was curious about is what would a goal around the local food pillar look like? Molly shared that we provide about 4% grown in Illinois food that we eat in Illinois, which was ironic that it was so in line with our 4% of conserved land number. But we were thinking about what a potential goal might look like for that pillar. And Molly reminded us that there was a 20% by 2020 goal that just did not have a lot of support from the administrations in Illinois that we did not reach or even get close to reaching. And that baseline 4% number is still kind of an estimate. We don't even have baseline measurements. So there was a lot to unpack there about information that we need to know and then what a potential goal might even look like. We've tossed around 10%, I think. Anyone else from group 3? I see Oren unmuted himself.
Yeah, no, just that the conversation wasn't urban or rural, it was urban and rural.
Yeah, and the intersection and how the two can support each other and take pressure off each other. It was really great.
Yeah, I can go next if that's okay. Just, I think one of the big things that was raised from both an agriculture perspective and an open space perspective, especially related specifically to Chicago area, is the amount of red tape and bureaucracy that folks have to go through in order to do some really basic stuff, including like surveys of sites and doing a lot of things that are, I think, I mean, from what I could tell, they're burdensome to people that have the resources to deal with something like that. But for communities that don't necessarily have, the legal or, financial, capabilities to deal with some of this, is obviously a huge hurdle. And I've heard about this in a number of different settings, one from, survey, land surveys and that kind of thing, soil testing opportunities at some sites where people want to be able to grow their own produce and those kind of things. And also, I know water access has been a major issue in the city. And that's just another example of, government regulatory structures that are just not serving the communities that they're supposed to be. Or at the very least, they're serving only certain sections of the population and not everybody equitably. So it's definitely a big issue. And some other things we talked about, we try to think through like the jobs component of this, and we didn't get super far, but I think, Liz Stelk made a good point that, the diversification of the kind of things that we grow here in Illinois will ultimately lead to more opportunities for, processing facilities, for different specialty crops and things, and those will help create jobs in the end, even if they aren't the ones that are, on the field growing. If there's people processing and transporting those things, like those are all, jobs within the food chain that could be created as a result. I see a comment on here that says in Chicago we need land zoned agricultural so it's taxed at a lower rate, and I totally get that. We've actually done some legislation with IEC to create urban agricultural zones in in municipalities and stuff. We've passed that bill, but it has been very difficult to have any municipalities actually adopt that at the local level yet, as this was all kind of voluntary basis. But definitely get that we need to mess with that. Agricultural zoning in general is a big issue in Illinois, not just in urban areas, but also in rural ones when it relates to, regulations around livestock facilities and a lot of other stuff. So definitely very much acknowledge that. I don't know if anybody else in my group has anything they want to add that I may have missed, but that seemed like the big stuff.
And I also don't want to volunteer Nikki, but you spoke in our group, and if you would like to raise what you said about accessing open space to the group.
I knew you were going to do that. Yeah, I just want to put a friendly reminder out there. I'll keep it short, but it's been my experience as someone with a disability that I've noticed that when there are coalitions and alliances and people doing policy work, everyone's doing a great job of having DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion on their brain. And I notice that a lot of times disabled people are often not thought of as part of that list. So I just want to encourage everyone to think of that when they're thinking of putting people in places of leadership to do your best to include the voices of disabled people as well.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's something that it does not get talked about enough. I mean, obviously, expanding all of these things and having, this DEI aspect of all this work is very, very important, but it's definitely good to, bring up the fact that we need to be cognizant of what DEI actually means and then make sure it actually got everybody. In addition, I saw Katie brought up the civilian climate corps. I forgot this was a topic of conversation in our group too, related to jobs. Part of the Biden executive order was trying to figure out a way to establish a civilian climate corps, which would sort of be the 2021 version of the civilian conservation corps that was set up under President Roosevelt back in the day. And it was a really, integral part of building up infrastructure in our national parks and a lot of other areas around the country. And there's, I think, an argument to be made that that could be a great way of, creating jobs in a lot of communities, around the country. So definitely something we want to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. So if anyone wants to take another second to share anything, a report out, if not, then we're going to move into just wrapping things up.
I just wanted to add real quick to what Elliott was saying. And I think that we have to think in terms of the jobs piece from a systems perspective. And so that may mean we need lawyers, we need accountants, we need delivery people, we need cashiers, we need all kind of folks. So I think we need to make sure that the mix is configured system-wide.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I think, one of the things we're thinking through is this jobs component of this. I think job training needs to be an aspect of this in education. We're still working out what exactly that means, but no, totally agree. It's not just going to be, physical labor, farm jobs or drivers. It's also going to be legal expertise and a lot of other stuff that could be part of this and building up the education in these communities. I think it's great. Yeah.
Awesome.
And Andrea, I think about that all the time and it makes me upset every single time.
I honestly think that this is something we could push, because when we talk about the safety of our country and our world, like, we're not going to be fighting. We're going to be fighting over water,
Yeah.
and food. Real quick, Oren, you declined to say what the percentage of food you thought Chicago could produce. Would you be willing to kind of throw out a number?
Oh, given the potential infrastructure, including rooftops, backyards, converted commercial spaces, old factory spaces, all of that, and then including peri-urban, I would say around 50%. Using season extension stuff, all of those things it's a conversation we need to have, but can't do it right here.
Yeah, no, that's great, Oren. I'd be more excited. I'd be excited to talk more about that too.
Oh, absolutely. I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah, and we'll get to this. We're going to send out a survey after this to collect info from folks if they want to keep talking. And these are the kind of, connections that we want to be able to get out of this. So really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, we will. So I think, Lindsay, is that what you just shared in the chat? Yes.
Yeah,
Cool.
here's
All
the,
right.
the survey. We'll also email it out. So this is just if things are fresh in your brain and you'd like to start working through them and you have the time at 2:30 on a Friday, feel free, but we'll also send it out.
Great. And just so it's accessible to everyone, I'm going to try to put this on the WOVA app. I think it'll work. But if not, we will try to get an email out to everybody, but we'll put that notes document in there if you want to jot down anything, and this survey link, but go ahead and click that now. We have 4 minutes left and maybe we can try to do it, but we just want to end with a, oh, thank you, Megan. She just pasted the link in the WOVA chat. Awesome.
Thanks, Megan.
So we want to try to end this with a quick poll, and we will see if we can end at 2:30. So I'm going to put this poll everywhere question, this link again in the chat, and it should take you back to the poll, but with a new question. And I can share my screen so those of you who are still with us can see it. So we see that, are you walking away with a better understanding of what 30 by 30 is? and why it could be beneficial to Illinois. So we have a couple votes in, which is great. Great understanding. There's a moderate understanding. So far, nothing below moderate. So great job. There's still work to do, but I'm happy that we've been able to explain it in a way, and there's more resources on the WOVA app to that executive order to understand a little bit of what's happening at the national level. So I'll just give another second to respond to this if anyone would like to. And the cool thing about Poll Everywhere is it basically changes the question for you as soon as I change the question. But we're going to go into another question, and you can re-click on the link if you'd like to. And oh, I could have just hit next. All right, so now this second question. Are you confident that the 30 by 30 plan is heading in the right direction? So that should be activated and ready for responses if you click that link. Just want to know, where your head's at walking away from this listening session. If you are, fairly confident, still need a little more explanation. Is the link working? I don't see any responses.
It still has the first question on there.
Oh, weird. Okay. Let's go back here. Thanks, Liz. Did it switch?
No, it hasn't switched for me.
Okay. Well, this might be a dud because I'm not sure what it's doing. I thought I activated it in the other one. Now it's good.
Do you want to say that question again, and maybe people can do thumbs up?
Sure.
Thumbs
So are you
down?
confident that the 30 by 30 plan is heading in the right direction? Got a yes. Cool. Yes and yep and awesome. Okay, and then I know we're at 2:30, so I'm just going to ask this now. How important is the 30 by 30 plan to you? Oh, my dog is moving my arm, so I cannot get my cursor here. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to leave us with this on a shared screen. How important is it? Do you feel a connection? So a lot of you said very important. So the importance is there. I think you have seen, you have heard, and you have felt a connection to this presentation, this plan, and yeah, how your input can help ensure that we are going about this in the right way. So I just want to reiterate that that survey is really helpful into keeping in contact with you. So if you are a part of an organization, that's a way for the Environmental Council and coalition members right now to invite you to future meetings. If you are not a part of an organization and you're wondering where you fit in this, it's through future action alerts, it's staying involved in future action alerts from the Environmental Council and from the Stewardship Alliance, making your voice heard when our policymakers need to hear it. So, Lindsay and Elliott, anything else before we roll on out of here into the Friday?
Yeah, the way to stay involved is to help us shape this plan, help us make a plan that hits on all of our shared goals.
Yeah, and just really appreciate everybody's input on this. We've been kind of working on this in a bubble, sort of. So it's good to be able to get out into the, into the world and be able to kind of field a lot of this to folks. So again, just very, very appreciative of everybody's input on this. It's going to help us a lot.
I just have one last thing. If you are so moved and you're excited about this and maybe interested in hosting a similar listening session in your community or around the issue that you are maybe the expert on or the expert on leading conversations around, please get a hold of us. Yeah, Andy will email the survey. And Emily, the Center for Western Priorities has the best resources right now. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that if you're interested in hosting a listening session, we might have a little bit of funding to fund folks to host them for us and for the coalition. So get a hold of us, reach out.
And if you all are able to email the presentation, we'll make sure it's up in the Whova as part of the documentation for the full event. Wanted to thank you all so much for the time and energy today and all the participants for your engagement, knowing that this is an important process moving forward and a real opportunity for a lot of kind of cross-sector really thinking about the urban-rural linkages to really maximize the potential from this work and the 30 by 30 visions. So thank you all very much. Thanks for everybody participating. Thanks for our ASL interpreter today. Thanks so much for the Spanish translation. Very appreciative of all our volunteers and staff, support work, and the A team as well. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and hope to and remember that there are going to be follow-up sessions next Friday and Saturday. So we'd love to keep folks engaged. So thank you all. Have a great weekend.